Hi guys, in today's video we're going to be using the Spar Max 4 to paint a miniature from start to finish. We're going to be painting the Space Marine up in a Raptors colour scheme, so it's going to look like an olive drab type scheme. In this video we're going to be going over the absolute basics of airbrushing. I'll hopefully be showing you how I clean the airbrush out between paint changes, and we'll also be trying to slow down the process as much as I possibly can to show you how to airbrush a miniature for the absolute beginner. Now first of all I want to say a huge thank you to graphicair.co.uk who sent me out the airbrush for review. Also the airbrush comes with a complete package of compressor and spray pot. Now this package is great value for the absolute beginner, and if you want to save even more money, check the description box down below and I'll put a code where you can save £12 off the package price. Okay guys, so let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is prime the miniature. It's very important that you prime your miniatures to give the miniature a nice base for subsequent paint layers to adhere to. If you don't prime the miniature, you'll find that the paint spiders and drips and runs off the miniature. So really important that you prime the miniature. I'm going to be using Alclad 2's lacquer primer. It's important to note lacquer primers are very harmful if inhaled. I use a spray booth and I also have a mask, as you can see here. Using lacquer 2 primers, you need a good quality airbrush with PTFE solvent proof packing seals. Now the Max 4 has PTFE solvent proof packing seals, so we're absolutely fine to use the Alclad 2 lacquer paints. It's also very important, if we're using Alclad 2 lacquer primers, that we use Alclad 2's brush cleaner, as regular airbrush cleaner won't clean the paint out of your airbrush. So if you are going to use Alclad 2's lacquer primer to prime your miniatures, make sure you buy the airbrush cleaner as well. I start off by giving the paint a thorough shake. This is really important to do guys, to make sure that the paint's thoroughly mixed in the bottle ready to put into the paint cup. Now I'm going to put a little paint into the paint cup. Screw the lid back on, and we're going to start airbrushing. Now I'm going to be airbrushing at 20 psi guys. You can airbrush at a little higher or a little lower, but here you'll see that I'm just pulling back ever so slightly on the trigger. I'm just going to move the camera angle, and I'm slowly airbrushing the primer. As you can see, the primer sprays out super smooth out the airbrush. And if a little grey still shows through, that's not a problem. We don't want a thick layer of primer, a thin layer is more preferable. So build up the priming layer nice and slowly. And there we go, we have one primed miniature. Now we're going to spray the residual paint from the airbrush cup into this paint pot. As you heard that sound, that meant that the paint had just finished being emptied, and now I'm going to add some Alclad 2 lacquer airbrush cleaner. I'm going to use a little paper towel to make sure the side walls of the airbrush cup are clean. And I'm going to spray out the cleaner into the airbrush cup. I'm going to add a tiny bit more cleaner to make sure that any residual paint has been cleaned out. And as you can see, we have a clean airbrush cup. Now we're going to start base coating the miniature using AK Interactive War Games paint Olive Drab Shadow. Now this is a ready mixed airbrush acrylic paint. What that basically means is it's pre-thinned to be sprayed straight out of your airbrush. I'm going to show you the consistency of the paint. I'm going to, as always, give it a good shake. And we're going to show you the consistency in this paint pot. As you can see, the consistency is that of milk. So you want the consistency of your paint to be fairly thin. Okay guys, so now I'm going to be spraying the miniature about 1 inch to 2 inches away, and again I'm spraying the base paint at 20 psi, and we're just going to slowly build up this base layer. What you'll find is if you keep the airbrush in one position, you'll build up the paint too quickly in that one area, and when it becomes wet you'll saturate the miniature with too much paint and you could be left with drips. So keep the airbrush moving, keep the miniature moving, and you'll get a nice even base layer. As you can see, I've got residual paint in the airbrush cup, so now I'm going to remove this into the spray pot. Now I'm going to spray water into the airbrush cup. Now I'm going to add a water Medea airbrush cleaner to make sure all the residual paint has been removed from the airbrush. I do this every time I change paint colours. This may seem like a bit of a chore guys, but it's to ensure that you've got a nice clean airbrush, and also it stops you stripping down the airbrush on regular basis. Now we're going to highlight the Space Marine using Olive Drab light base. I'm going to add some paint to the airbrush cup. Now what you'll find guys is you don't need that much paint, to be honest. 3 or 4 drops is enough. I've dropped the PSI down to about 15 PSI. What we're doing here guys is we're aiming for the centre of the shoulder pauldrons, and I'm only pulling back on the airbrush trigger a tiny amount. And I'm aiming towards the top of the head. We're going to paint the arm. And the hand. Now we're going to paint down the centre of the leg and the knee pad. And now we're going to paint the top third of the backpack. The bottom of the backpack. Down the centre of the backs of the legs. And remember guys, I'm only pulling back on the trigger a tiny amount. This much. It's time to clean our airbrush out again guys. Add some water. A little bit of airbrush cleaner. And we're done. If you have any residual paint left at the side, you can use a bit of tissue just to mop it up. Now we're going to use our last highlight, which is olive drab highlights. Now guys, it's important to note that we're just highlighting the very extreme surfaces of the miniature here, just the knee pads, the tops of the shoulder pauldrons, the bottoms of the legs that are protruding out, the top third of the backpack, time to clean our airbrush once again. I won't show you the process guys because I've just shown you twice already, but basically we'll clean out the cup, we'll add some water, then some airbrush cleaner. Now we're going to add some gloss varnish to the airbrush cup. We're going to be using Vallejo's Metal Varnish Gloss Varnish. The reason we're using the gloss varnish is to protect the miniature and also help the natural flow of the wash we're going to apply to the miniature after the gloss. So I'm spraying the gloss here at 25 psi and I'm building it up nice and slowly. Now we're going to apply the wash. I'm going to be using AK Interactive Dark Streaking Grime, and I've placed some in a handy shot glass, and I'm just going to place the wash around all of the recesses of the marine. Don't worry if you're a little messy, guys, because we can use some white spirit to clean it up. Now we're going to add some dust to the bottom of the legs of the Space Marine and also on the base. We're going to be using Vallejo Game Air Leather Brown. Okay guys, I'm angling the airbrush down and we're just going to ever so lightly paint some of the leather brown onto the bottom of the Space Marine's leg to make them look dusty. And you can see that brown building up nice and slowly. Now we're going to airbrush some ultra matte varnish to get rid of that horrid looking gloss varnish. Here I'm spraying at 20 psi and about 2 inches away, and I'm slowly building up that ultra matte varnish layer. As you can see guys, the miniature has an ultra matte finish. It's important to note that every single time that I change between paints and varnishes guys, that I cleaned out my airbrush. I'm going to paint off camera now guys, and I'm going to finish off this miniature as I don't want to confuse this video. All that's left to do is a little bit of hand brush painting on the miniature, and we'll be back when it's finished and we'll talk a little bit about airbrushing. Here you can see I've finished the Space Marine using some hand brush techniques. The reason I didn't film this is because I wanted to make sure that this video concerned airbrushing only guys, as not to confuse people new to airbrushing and painting scale models. In all of my other videos, if you want to check them out previously guys, you'll see that I finish all Space Marines with a mixture of airbrushing and brush painting techniques. Now this miniature will be sold on my eBay channel guys, and I'm trying to raise funds for a holiday, so if you want to support my channel guys, please bid generously and or just follow the ensuing bidding process on my eBay channel. I'll put a link in the description box down below. Also want to say a huge thank you once again to graphicair.co.uk. Don't forget to check that description box below where you'll find a direct link to the airbrushing kit that I use, and also a discount saving £12 off the package deal. Okay guys, don't forget to hit the like button, please leave a comment, and thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.